What up YouTube? Welcome back to the Joe McFo Show. Today I'm going to give you my top 5 tips for gesture drawing. Now, because I know everyone's already going to ask me how long did these drawings take, each one was about 3 minutes or so. I timed myself on my phone, and when the timer went off, I moved on to the next one. Alright guys, so here are my top 5 tips for gesture drawing. Number 1, draw your center line or your action line. Now, one of the things that a lot of people struggle with when they're drawing the figure is they don't make it very dynamic. It's always very stiff, or they struggle with the pose. Maybe it's more action-packed in the reference or the model that you're seeing, but for some reason you're not able to capture that. Well, oftentimes being able to articulate the center line will be able to help you. So one thing that I do is I try and make sure I put all of my diagonals down very early on, or I make sure I at least consider them or emphasize them when I'm drawing. And something that is very common for a lot of beginner artists, let's say that in terms of on a scale of 1 to 10, the action of the pose is at a 6. So it's moderately action-packed. For some reason, our brain will underemphasize that and we'll draw it at like a 3 in terms of how cool the pose is supposed to be. When in reality, we need to push it to something like an 8 or a 9. So remember, creating art is all about visual interest. So by making your lines more dynamic, by making those poses more diagonal and pushing things and extending things and exaggerating things, that's going to help you a lot. Tip number 2, know your anatomy. Now, something else that a lot of people don't think about is when they see the figure, they just draw the skin that they see. They draw the contours or the outside shapes. And very rarely do beginner artists think about the muscles and the bones that are actually underneath the skin, allowing the body to do what it does. Every time we move up our arm, there's certain muscles that come into play, right? Our shoulders, our biceps, the muscles in the forearm, same with the bones. It's the exact same situation that's happening. We have to consider that. So by knowing and understanding anatomy, by taking classes or going to learn about it from books, whatever the case is, you really want to make sure you understand the anatomy. And in terms of some things I might recommend, I actually really like the book Drawing the Head and Hands by Andrew Loomis, as well as his book Figure Drawing for All It's Worth. There's also a lot of George Bridgman books. There's also plenty of tutorials and things like master classes. You could find tutorials here on YouTube. You could go to a community college where they offer these sorts of courses and learn from the professor. Whatever the case is, make sure you understand it. And it doesn't have to be to the minutia that maybe a physician needs to understand it, but just get the basics down. Know what a bicep is, know where your lats are, your quads, know where your calf muscle is. Things like that are really going to help you improve. Tip number 3, draw your lines with confidence. Something that's incredibly common for beginner artists is they will use very scratchy lines in their drawing. And it's not something that I think is necessarily what they want to do. It's just how they articulate the line. And so what ends up happening is that because people are afraid to draw, because they're afraid to put down that mark, they'll often do very small lines to indicate form, when in reality, that's exactly what makes it look amateurish. So what I recommend is draw with one smooth stroke if you can. Now, if you make a mistake, obviously you can erase it and that's okay. But something that I try and focus on in some of these drawings that you're seeing here is I try and make sure I don't go over the lines too many times, if at all, in some situations. As a matter of fact, the fewer lines I put down, the better it looks, in my opinion. I actually remember one time where I was in a figure drawing workshop and there was a new student coming in, and it was 3 hours long, and I said, hey, have a good time. I know this is your first go at it, but just see what you can come up with, and hopefully by the end of it you'll come up with some good drawings, you'll get some experience, and hopefully I can give you some feedback. And so the 3 hours goes by and I don't really see him or bother him at all. I'm doing my thing, running the workshop, making sure everyone's taken care of. And at the end of it, I talked to him and I said, so how did your drawings come out? And he told me that he didn't draw a single thing. And I was shocked. And I was like, well, why? And he said the model was moving too fast. So rather than working on building that confidence to draw the figure, he decided to just opt out and not draw at all. And if you don't draw at all, there's no way you're gonna improve. That really bothered me, and I was like, wow, this is really sad that this person was held back by so much inhibition that he didn't want to put down a single pencil stroke. So keep that in mind, guys. You're not always going to be having a good day when you're doing the figure. Even myself, I've been drawing the figure for at least 10 years, and I have my off days. And as a matter of fact, you're seeing me readjust certain things I don't like in the drawing throughout this video, but that's okay, because it's all about getting that practice in. It's all about getting the pencil mileage and just continuing to excel as an artist. Tip number 4, move around your drawing. One thing that I really don't like is when people fixate on one part of the figure too much. So let's say it's a 2 or 3 minute drawing and they'll be focusing on the head and the arm for that entire time, and they don't end up drawing the full figure. And when that happens, we don't get an idea of what the full pose is supposed to be. And it actually makes it more difficult, because a lot of the people who want to do character design and storyboarding or things like that, they'll need this sort of practice, and they'll need to know how to do action poses or dramatic poses, or maybe even more subtle poses, whatever the case is. And so this is the groundwork for that. So really make sure that you don't just worry about one aspect of the drawing. Another key thing is moving very quickly, especially if you're talking about working in an industry like in games or animation. Being quick is going to be an asset to you, especially when you have things like harsh deadlines. So if you can move around the figure, and if you can draw a whole figure in just a couple of minutes, then imagine how much more work you're going to get done, and imagine how much of an asset you'll be to a particular company, or if you're working for yourself or you have a client, maybe you're doing freelance. It's going to make it so much better for you. And if you're doing some sort of freelance, or if you have a time restraint, you'll free up more of your time, because you're able to move around, you're able to build that comfort level with your drawing, and having that speed on your side is really going to help you. So don't fixate on one part of the drawing too much. And the 5th and final tip, be loose and have fun. Now, I know that can be very challenging for some people, especially who are beginners, or maybe they say, I like painting more, I like drawing environments more, or props, or vehicles, whatever the case is. But ultimately, doing figure drawing can be a lot of fun. There's so much that you can do with a character or a figure, and there's a reason why it's so popular. So while you want to keep the anatomical principles in your head, thinking about where the shoulder blades are, the clavicle, or the rib cage, or the humerus, or how the feet are angled, and those types of things, those are important. But it's important to remember how to push, going back to the whole center line thing. So push and exaggerate something a little bit more than you normally would. And it's okay if it doesn't look like the masters. You don't have to be Da Vinci or Michelangelo or an Andrew Loomis or some of these other artists that are more current that you may look up to, whoever that may be. Just have fun, be loose, explore, and if you explore, you might even develop your own style that way. There's certain ways that people draw the figure or draw a character that is completely unique to them, and it really allows them to stand out amongst other artists because they've had that time to just have fun and see what they can do. And the beauty of art is how we can interpret things. The way I draw something is very different than how you might draw something, and neither are necessarily wrong. And it's just how we see the world. It's how we interpret things. Maybe you like boxy shapes. Maybe I like more smooth, rounded shapes. Maybe someone likes to do things that are hyper exaggerated and the proportions are really bizarre and wonky. Whatever it is, just explore that, have fun, and see what you can do, because without that, you will never know. You'll never be able to grow as an artist if you don't try things. As a matter of fact, when I think back to my first time figure drawing when I was 15 years old, I struggled a lot, and it was actually embarrassing. If I can ever find those drawings, maybe I'll post them somewhere on this channel, but I was not very good, and it took me a long time to get to the level where I'm at. So just take your time, learn as much as you can, have fun, and do all the other stuff I was telling you about earlier, because I think that'll help you guys out. Alright guys, that does it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, all that cool stuff for more awesome content, and I'll see you next time.